Welcome to the Bright Commerce Podcast with your host, Judd Dunnigan and Carlos Caneja. We have a 4-part series called Web Application Design Breakdown that will walk you through the challenges on quoting, building, and delivering a well-rounded web application.
All right. Hello, everybody. We're here on the 4th podcast regarding design and development process, or getting your idea or project executed and off the ground and live. I'm Carlos Caneja with Brightcode, and here I have Judd with Bright Vessel. How you doing today, Judd?
Pretty good. How you doing, Carlos?
I'm doing well. I'm excited about this. Finally wrapping up this 4-part series.
Yeah.
So today we're going to get into that 4th part of our process, and it's pretty much generic in terms of pillars or process. Part 4 is really the development part / going live. So by now you've already done your strategy, you've already done your design. You're now basically executing that design. Here's how I want to kick things off, and it's usually by having a initial call with the customer about this phase to let them know, hey, we're now done designing, we're going to get into development. This is when we write code. So we're not going to be as talkative, we're not going to be as interactive, we're not going to be asking for as much feedback as we were previously during the user experience or user interface build out or design.
And you shouldn't have to, because you pretty much spelled out what it's going to look like, how it's going to function,
Correct,
what are the requirements, and
right.
And
So we always want to let the customer know, like, hey, we're going to talk, just not as much. So don't think that we're neglecting you. It's just that we're coding, right?
Yeah.
And the coding process is close the doors, shut your phone off, and put your head down, because you can't be bothered when you're coding.
No, and it's, I've done the mistake of allowing clients to, like, you should have like a staging site where they can see the progress. But the problem with that is that as they see progress, they might think something's broken. So they'll always,
That's a great point.
ask you a lot of questions. So typically we put the staging site behind a password that's worked on. That way, when it's ready for the client to look at, we will say, hey, here's the password to review. And that's usually when it's 90% done, or if we have to let them see something that we did that was for customization, for example. So if we had to customize the way the shopping cart worked, we would show them that functionality, how it worked.
Perfect.
Before we actually go into, let's say, coding the design part of it. So if it's just a bare, a vanilla version of some custom functionality, then we would show them how that works and get approval on the functionality, and then go to the design part if we have to, skin out a design for it. So depending on the project itself, like if it's a standard just WooCommerce website, for example, and using standard plugins and things, so there's no customization, that's a little different. But if you are customizing stuff with the client, I always recommend to get that out of the way first, so the functionality is approved, then go into the part where you're going to be laying out and fine-tuning the design, because you definitely want to have approval phases for that. Otherwise, I tell clients, anything after the design phase is done, if we have to go and do development again, or if they want to change something, we have to go back to the Figma or the design itself.
Right. Sometimes you go back a step. Right.
Because so many people just try to do a little tweak. I'm going to do this little tweak for the customer because just to make them happy. Next thing you do a little tweak.
Judd, here's what I've learned over the years.
Yeah.
And that is, during the creative process, people get creative, and it's a good thing. However, creation costs time and money. So you have to explain that to them, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna put, especially if it's going to put you over budget, or if you got so much scope creep where you didn't pad it up enough. Because, when you always have to pad up, because it's coming down the pipeline. There's going to be a feature that they forgot about or that they desperately need. So you just sort of have to be prepared for that. It's never. So
I think we mentioned scope creep in one of the previous podcasts, but just to reiterate what that is, in case someone hadn't seen one of the last podcasts, kitchen sink syndrome and scope creep are basically when you do not spell out the requirements well in a proposal, and the client, or it is spelled out well, but the client keeps continually coming back and asking for changes complaining about things and trying to get those changes done for free, not understanding that anything like that comes out, it's actually coming out of our pocket, not theirs. So it really needs to be considered. So scope creep is probably one of the, I think everybody that's in this industry, freelancers, agencies, you name it, they've experienced that in some respect.
Not just in our industry, but anytime you build,
anywhere. Like, oh yeah, like
yeah.
Like you get someone to paint your house, you know, and they come in, paint the house. Oh, I don't really not think I like that tint of that color now.
I've been guilty of it from the consumer standpoint, where, you know, I hire a contractor and then I start getting creative. Well, that's costing me more money, and they let me know at some point. Hey, happy to do it, but we didn't budget for this initially. Now, there's also a flip side of scope creep, right? Because scope creep is the interaction between the agency and the customer. There's actually another term called gold plating, and that's something that happens.
I haven't heard that one yet.
Yeah, that's something that happens internally, right? So let's say you give a project to a designer or a developer, right? And they think it's a great idea. They want to make it better, you know, maybe it's a thing, right? They feel like it has to be done that way. And what you're now doing is you're over servicing your client. You're going over.
And that's, oh, let's get into personalities within an agency, because now we're talking about the different personality types. Whether you have expressive, a driver,
it's just managing people,
analytical.
Well, to me,
agencies have.
I constantly remind everybody that we're not building this for us. We're building this for somebody else.
Have no emotional attachment to it.
Right. If there's
the client already has it, I don't need you to have it as well.
Right. You want to go build it on your own, go for it. If the customer says, I want a dress that's yellow, that's what we're gonna give them. We're gonna give them.
That's a fundamental flaw in a creative director or expressive person in an agency. Is going to be that, like, basically wanting to fine tune something, not understanding that everyone's salary depends on that getting paid when it needs to get paid, not when they think it's done, but when it's actually done.
Sure.
You know, so, or when it's done for the client, the requirements have been met. Now, we all love to have great projects and do great things. Don't get me wrong about saying that. But, you know, when you're the agency owner, you're trying to make sure everyone's getting paid.
Right, you're looking at the numbers.
The project is already overdue 15 days. You know, every day that it goes over costs the agency. And it's sometimes, you know, the people that work within the agency don't understand that. Like, every day that your project goes over, you're now costing the agency. So that bonus you want, that vacation, extra vacation time that you might want to get or hope to get from, you know, time off, all that kind of depends on everyone kind of come together and finishing that project. And with good quality for the client, but on time as well. And so that's a major one. So scope, that's a challenge in an agency. It literally
that is by far the biggest. And you know, over the years with experience, you learn to manage that better and better.
Yeah.
At least we have.
That's one thing, you know, when you run an agency, you really are, you know, looking for people you can count on, like, that can have your back. And it's like, I will say, and for this particular thing to really stay intact and not happen, you know, as far as the project, making sure that it gets through, is the project manager. Gosh, man, like, it's so hard to find a good project manager.
Yeah, to be a good project manager, you have to be multifaceted. You have to have very broad knowledge of all different verticals, you know, UX, UI, platforms, hosting / infrastructure. There's so much for you to know, but yet you can't be too deep on either one of these verticals, right? You have to go out to the right team member that's happens to have depth or knowledge in that particular vertical, right? But you need to be able to communicate or be the middleware / middleman with the client to say, hey, in order for us to make this happen, we're going to need A, B, and C, right? We're going to bring in a developer to do this part. We're going to bring in this third party to do that part, and we're going to glue it all together so that you can have this beautiful functionality.
They're literally the problem solving aspect.
Right. So it's project management is challenging. And then on top of that, you got scope creep and gold plating, right?
Yeah, which that role, you know, what I love, because I have a really great project manager. Her name's Romina, and she literally she has stopped the client from going over her, to come to me to come, I need this for free. So she's the one that's always in there. So every once in a while, they'll slip through and say, Judd, I need your help because this one, they're, they really want to have this feature. And then usually, I mean, we try to help clients. In some cases, they might not have known the budget. So I'll usually say, meet me halfway, which means I'm doing it at cost.
Right. At the end of the day, you want to please the customer, right? Because the way we look at it is just how you look at it. This isn't a one-time transaction. This is going to be an ongoing partnership for the most part, right? If you re-platform or if you go out of business, that's a different story. But for the most part, these are ongoing customers. So you want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I always say, it's what the saying is, you don't want to jump over $1 to pick up a penny, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to crush every transaction. You can take a loss here and there, but overall, you need to stay profitable, right? But it's okay to take a loss here and there. In other words, don't get too greedy is what it comes down to. Make people happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think
long-term customers,
yeah,
all the time, we'll take care of them. We'll say, hey, this one's on us. No worries, you've been a long-term customer. And listen, people appreciate that. I appreciate that when I go to any business and they tell me that. Like, it makes me feel like, oh, they want me here,
Yeah, I have to be honest, like when it comes to, I've had some really difficult clients to where we started the design phase, and I knew immediately that just from dealing with and talking to them and the way that they're interacting with my team, that we weren't a good fit. In those cases, I wouldn't even get to development. I'd just say, hey,
the red flags,
we're fine with giving back the deposit and cutting our losses, let's say at 24 hours, because we know that it will end up being really bad. So on the client side, it's like finding good clients that appreciate your work, appreciate your worth. That is the most important part, is appreciating your worth. I don't care how much you want to charge per hour. Bottom line is, if you're not being appreciated for your worth and your client's not appreciating it, that trickles down not just from the agency owner, but all the way down to the team. And I've had customers just treat my team members so bad that they don't want to work at Bright Vessel anymore. So it's in that. And that's all part of that scope creep situation, and I think as an agency owner, it's very important to take a step back and say, is this affecting my team? Is this affecting, our progress as a company? And I feel like that's, you make those decisions as an agency owner, if it's going to be an account that you want to keep or not. And I will say that a lot of times just addressing it and speaking to the customer or client, you're able to work things out. They're able to understand, I didn't realize that it took this long, or I didn't know.
Right.
So I tend to try to explain a lot of things up front, and especially the discovery call, like lay out all the ground rules.
A lot of it is
the rules of engagement. This is how we work. So it's understood.
A lot of it is education, right? They're coming.
Absolutely.
We have customers for a reason, and that is they can do it. If they were able to do it, they wouldn't come. They wouldn't pay somebody else to do it.
No.
Right?
Yeah,
so there's a lot of education involved.
I do love the fact that a lot of things have gone Zoom now, because we do record calls that we're having, our kickoff calls, because that helps out a lot. Helps to go back for either the client or us. So if it's something, I thought we said that would get done, and it's like, no, here's what we discussed.
Right.
So it's that's definitely with a kickoff call. I always like to record that, have meeting notes, that kind of helps. So I think any sort of client interaction, when it comes to scope creep, you want to document. You want to have just the documentation about what was asked, what was delivered. Because with scope creep, as you know, sometimes the client will say, I asked for something that you never even heard of. I'm sure that's happened to you, right? Like, didn't we talk about this?
All the time, yeah.
No, we didn't talk about that.
I tell people, I shouldn't say people, but I tell customers, and I tell my staff members, like, hey, if we can do some type of custom work for a client, and and we commit and we say yes, just because we've never built it before, it doesn't mean we don't know what we're doing, right? Because sometimes you may have to integrate with a third-party API or some kind of endpoint somewhere else. The reality is that the calls and the responses you're getting from that third party, and the way you show them on the interface that you're building on the web, it's no different than, you know,
I've
company
turned it
X versus
down.
company Y, right? It's the same process. It's just understanding maybe the
Yeah.
API a little bit more. So you have to remind people of that. Say, hey, I've never for memberships, right? We build membership sites all the time. They're never the same. Everybody
I
always
hate
needs a
subscription
slight
sites, man.
variation. Yeah, everybody always wants a slight variation. And
Yeah.
we tell people, hey, we've built these many, many times, but this is
Yeah.
a little bit custom because you want X, Y, Z, essentially. But anyway,
Yeah,
just kind of
I take that back. I love SaaS, but subscription like WooCommerce subscriptions, man, you know, like the tokenized system, man, that thing gets tweaked out at all.
it
You're
does. Let me
dead in
tell you,
the
it's
water.
I tell people all the
It's
time.
nerve-wracking.
It's
Yeah.
nerve. I agree. I prep customers for subscriptions. I tell
Yeah,
I tell them, hey,
it is a tedious process that they need to understand. If you want to tweak this out at all,
yeah,
sometimes it's better building out literally from the ground up a subscription service, like through Stripe or something. That's what we done. We started with. I've avoided WooCommerce subscriptions for that because WooCommerce subscriptions are for products specifically. They're not for. Well, I've had people try to combine the booking and the subscription plugin. Like take those two plugins, which are developed by two different developers, right? They're not the same plugin, and combine them together to do things. And when some cases like that, yeah, custom development is way more important. And yeah, if that's a good niche market, if you're doing a ton of membership sites. So bravo on that if you got that down, because yeah, that's a that's a doozy.
I tell you, I really educate them and say, hey, get ready. Number one is if we use Woo subscriptions, you are saving a ton of money because we're not writing this from scratch. And there's a lot
Yeah.
of logic that goes behind the subscriptions website, right? Recurring
Oh,
bill payments, tokenization.
what about so licensing? So if you have to do digital products and have licensing, that's what I'm
If
running
you tie it in
into
with that,
now.
that's a whole new layer of complexity as well, too. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
because sorry, go ahead.
it does work great out of the box, is what I'm saying. But when you do have
Yeah,
a problem with it, it is a painful one. It's a painful
yeah,
troubleshoot for sure. So again, we prep customers and educate them on this because they don't know what they're
yeah,
getting into. They've experienced it from the outside, but they never experienced it from the inside, meaning what it's like to run it
yeah.
and the
We
dark
worked
side of
the
it.
better part of a year for Irwin Naturals, a supplement, and they just kept on wanting to tweak subscriptions. Like just, and we were doing like, everything through Git, doing sprints, and it was just, but like they it was trying to make them understand when you change this thing, it affects
So
this thing.
yeah, it's almost like
So now
taking medicine.
now that
Yeah.
you want this, it supersedes what we did over
It
here.
breaks that or erases all this. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like,
Yeah.
it was just nonstop. It was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, they can't, because they were, there's some of them were good ideas, like they wanted to do,
Sure. Sure.
but it's like, again, ground up, like you might as well just spend 6 months and build the perfect subscription platform with all your requirements and not use a plugin.
I understand. Yeah,
Yeah,
no doubt. There's definitely a place for that. Yeah. So the bottom line is risk management and scope creep. Have check-ins with the customer. Explain to them what the process is that you're developing. We're gonna have a check-in at some point with the deliverable. Run that deliverable
Yeah.
with them on a call and show them like, hey, this is where we're at. This is what we've built. Are we happy with this? Can we continue on to the next phase of development, right?
Yeah, what I've taken is like my standard operating procedure, like docs that I have for my team when working a project, and summarize that for the client side so that they understand. I started taking what I'm doing internally and then showing that to the client in a summarized fashion, saying this is what you're going to get with your project. This is when the approval. This is the step here. So it's kind of works that way, which I think brings us to a good topic, which is going to be like QA.
Yeah, that segues right into that testing and quality assurance or /QA.
Yeah.
So
we got the development, we got, make sure there's a process, make sure they check things, make sure that's all done, get those sign-offs. Like they have to be a part of that process to approve it if it's customization for sure. And then once that's done, you're still gonna have to bang up against it because you're still gonna find some things maybe in a QA process that wasn't caught in just a quick glance on how something works. And that's where it gets that's where the scope creep thing can come back in, because they'll see something that oh, this is the best thing that I've heard all the time. Oh, wait, you're the developer. Shouldn't you know that? If you're a client,
Right.
you say that to somebody,
Yeah,
that's just not like, there's just no way a developer can know exactly what you had in mind without you telling them. So if you don't spell out the requirement, we can help spell it out, but if it didn't meet it exactly, you still understand that it might require more additional time and work to get it to that version now that you know, that is kind of conjured up at the
yeah,
end of the
yeah.
project.
Over the years, and I'll kind of get into our process a little bit, right? It's that the developer will finish the work, the developer will QC it, then it goes on to the designer or the UX UI designer. If it's a lot of visual work, if it's complex workflow, the UX UI designer doesn't usually get involved. But as far as like pixel for pixel design to development, we'll send it over to the UX UI designer. Then it goes over to the project manager. If the project manager approves it all, then we move on when we present it to the customer. And even there, it's still not perfect, but it's presentable enough to move forward and show the customer some type of product, right? And say, hey, you no longer have vaporware. You actually have software now, right?
You brought up a great point. The UX UI designer, I try to have QA people, just straight up QA people come in and try to QA work. And that fundamental position, looking at anything, I always found more things wrong than a typical QA person or developer. So, you know, having a creative person look at something with that mindset, oh my God, like they'll find little things that you wouldn't think of.
Dude, they built it. They know at the back of their head. They built
so that's what like Thomas on my team does that. And I'm like, I know when he looks at something, it's like me looking at it. I'm like, he's gonna find probably everything that I'll find. So like I feel confident in that respect.
Font sizes, font types, misalignments in mobile versus desktop or tablet, you know, all those things, those fun things.
And then if you're looking for talent too, like the one thing that I always if a designer, if someone started as a creative person, graphic designer, let's say, and they move to web developer, that to me is always a key thing that I will look for if I'm hiring somebody. If they've always been a developer, I know right off the bat, I'm going to have a challenge with anything creative that they have to look at.
I couldn't agree more.
But a creative person that becomes a developer is so much more hireable in my head, because they already know that part of things. And that's like, you know, otherwise you're hiring two people. So, and I give you the reason I brought this up, quick story, like Bright Vessel, our website, Thomas doesn't really do, he's my creative director, doesn't really do website development. He went and built this site. He's like, John, I want to take this project on for myself. You know, I'm like, sure, go ahead. So he built the site. When I looked at the end, I couldn't find one thing wrong, really. I mean, I'm talking like 99%. I'm looking at it, I'm like, dude, there's nothing wrong with this. I'm like, Thomas, you've done a better job than you really gold plated it, huh? Yeah, I was like, you've done a better job than all of our developers combined, you know, in-house, because you really just from start to finish, it's solid, you know. So, and I'm not downing my other developers in-house. I just think, you know, I have a strong, I think, back-end development team.
Yeah.
And then I have the, you know, the creative side, which they do, and Thomas helps them. But just from Thomas, I think working for the last 5 years and saying finally, hey, look, I like to do that myself. When he went and did it, I was so impressed. I mean, I was like, yeah, you got a great bonus.
Yeah, that way. It's funny because I've tried that. It hasn't worked out well for me. It's worked out okay. I think the bottom line where we say, okay, we're not doing this anymore was budgeting. Developers can usually execute designs much quicker than designers.
Well, they can. So I'm not saying that he was so it was good, fast, and cheap, right? You could pick two. So he took his time on it, you know, and spent, you know, time, but like so that's the other thing too. We started using Oxygen Builder. It's like a newer builder. Man, the speed is so much faster than Elementor or Beaver. I'm talking
Elementor can get a little clunky sometimes. No pun intended, but sometimes it just, you know, it does
Oxygen.
a lot.
Use Oxygen?
No, we haven't used that now.
Oh, you use Elementor?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I use Beaver and I use both of them.
Yeah, Beaver Builder. Yeah.
Well, here's the other thing, like when it comes to clients, we have found that 98% of our clients don't even go into the website and do the builder. They ask us to do it. So it's
I
kind
know.
of pointless,
Yeah,
unless, and so Oxygen, I think, is kind of where I'm headed. I
sure.
really, without even caching, it's very fast.
Oh, I see.
Like your whole paint, Google's page speed and all
Oh,
that
you're talking
stuff.
about front load speed, not just back end.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
I
mean,
see.
that's
I
where I
see.
was like,
That's nice.
and so
Yeah.
when because he got me, like, he was just pushing me. He's like, let's do a different builder. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I want to go down that road.
That's a tough one because now you got to train everybody on this new builder, you know?
Well, yeah. So we did it for our site, but he did it, and it's like, I'm like,
That's,
this is great. So he's
yeah.
becoming an expert at that. So
I mean,
anyway, we're probably going too long into that,
yeah, no,
but
there's an upside to it too. You got to try new things. If not, you get stuck in
yeah,
this is the tool we've been using for years. Before we had this tool, and essentially this is an interactive tool. You can take a script and plop it in your staging site, and now everybody can interact with the
yeah,
content from a QC layer standpoint. Meaning that if you don't like what this says right here, you can click, add a comment, and say change the text to XYZ. Whereas before we had this software, it was screenshots and copying and pasting screenshots. Sometimes we get pictures from the customers with
yeah.
handwriting on it. It just becomes really, really messy. This tool really streamlines it. Just how Carlos
I
can
love
add
it. Yeah.
from Brightcode. But no, this
Yeah,
has been a lifesaver for us, and I think you use something very similar to this, right?
Volley.
Oh yeah, how do you spell that?
Bolley. Probably gonna want to put wireframe tool or whatever, but that's the one we use. It's exactly the same thing.
I say, yeah, it's
So we tried a bunch of different tools. The reason I like that one is because I got a lifetime deal from the AppSumo,
AppSumo.
that place.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was one of those that I had it for 5 years before I even started using it.
Uh-huh.
Like the first version was nowhere near what I wanted, but I always love when I buy these deals and then like years later they're still around, still making it better. And next thing you know, I'm like, okay, it's ready for me to start using. Yeah, but
Yeah,
here it is.
yeah. Yeah, anyway, no, this
Same
is
thing.
the same, like I always call it Coke versus Pepsi, right? It's all cola. I'm sure there's slight variations.
Let me see what the pricing is real quick.
Yeah, sure.
I want to see what yeah, there you go. Look, so I probably save because I literally have probably 80, actually more than 80 projects. So God knows how much I save a month.
It's I've been saying this for years. AppSumo was a gamble.
Total gamble, but it's worth it. Like it's like, I paid $49.
It's worth it
I
when the
think.
gamble pays off, but not all of them pay off.
Oh no, like I had Call Wagon. That was awesome. I loved it. Perfect. And then CallRail bought it and I lost it. It was like literally I could have it for I bought like just a ton of licenses because I was like, oh my God, this is like CallRail. But anyway, I lost it because CallRail bought it and they
I say.
didn't honor the deal. And so AppSumo, actually, I'm going into a whole bunch of tangents. So when we go to edit, you can get rid of all that shit. But I feel like I'm talking too much about AppSumo.
Don't cut this one like you've cut others. Just cut.
I just cut a couple things.
Yeah, just let it go. Okay.
Well, I'm gonna have the guy do it, that we've got to do the other two, so no worries.
All right. So we'll resume now. So moving on to the sign off. So once your project is completed in terms of development, once it's QC'd, it needs to get approved by the customer, right? So this is, for us, it's a one-on-one where we go over the whole entire project from A to Z. We'll even give it to them at this point so they can sit on it and play with it internally if they have to. And then we'll just want to see it in writing that, hey, we're good to go live. This is now approved.
Yeah.
That's our sign off in a nutshell, essentially, right? Or
same thing here. How do you handle when clients say, oh, we want to launch in a month and you're done?
Wait, I'm sorry. We want to launch.
So let's say you're finished, right? You're done.
Yeah.
Everything's done. Yeah. It's approved. They love it, but they don't want to launch in a month.
Okay. So here's how I haven't had that happen, but here's how I would do it. I've had similar situations, but let me ask you this, is this a customer that has an existing website or is it a brand new website altogether?
Existing website, so
Existing
they'll
website?
sit on it for a while,
Okay.
and
No,
so,
so no,
but,
no, no big deal. So hey, that sounds great. We'll go
Yeah.
ahead and set it up. When you're ready to flip the switch, it'll just be a DNS update, right? There'll
Yep.
be virtually no downtime if everything goes according to plan, right? There might be a small glitch here and there.
so let's say they hold the payment though, they wanna pay you.
Well, then
in
that
6 months.
see that falls outside of the outside of the.
I guess the reason I'm bringing it up, make sure it's in your terms, like we
Oh, I
talked
see,
about.
I see,
making
that's a
sure the
good point. That's a
requirements,
good
rules
point.
of
Yeah,
engagement
yeah.
are spelled
Yeah.
out. That's one of the things that can happen. So like all of a sudden, let's say you don't have a lot of clients, you have one or two and you're working from project to
That's a good
project.
point.
Make
Yeah.
sure when you're done and they approve it, that they understand that you still got to get paid. They can sit on it for 6 months from that point, but you have to make sure that
I
that's,
understand,
you know,
yeah. Hey,
that's
and
in the
with that-
contract.
With that being said, during your design and development phases, right? As you're doing check-ins, that's something you need to start, or at least we bring up to the customer, like, hey, when do we think we want to go live at this point? Because, you know,
Oh, absolutely.
we're looking at like 4 more weeks, basically, or 2 more weeks. Do you think you want to go live in 2 weeks? And if they come back to you and say, hey, we don't want to go live for 3 months, hey, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
But, you know, once the project is completed and you sign off on it, we do want to get that final payment. We're still going to help you launch the website and go live with it, but we won't.
Yeah, no, it's
essentially.
ready to go live on any server, but I just meant, yeah, that's something that can happen. So if you're just starting out and you're, like I said, working project to project, and that happens when you first start out, you work on one project, we on the next, till you have a team. Oh, you know, just make sure to speculate in there. And that's another thing when, I know we talked about terms before, but sometimes it's good if you're a single freelancer or individual working from site to site that you do, I would say third payment. So you do the initial third payment to start, initial third payment on completion of design and wireframe approval, and then the final third payment to launch or
see.
upon approval
Oh, I
of
see.
the
So
final.
you do 33, 33, 33, right?
Sometimes that's a little bit better, I think, for
Okay.
smaller agencies.
No,
'Cause
I agree. It's just we also do 3 payments, but we do 50, 25, 25.
Well, that's better too, because you're at
Here's
75.
and here's what it comes. I learned this from Chris Doe from the future, and he's always said
Yeah.
it like, hey, sometimes clients burn you. So at least if you get burnt, you lose
You're
25%.
at 75%.
It's not 50-50 because you know by default it's 50-50,
Yeah.
and it's like that last process or that last mile where you're like trying to get the project finished to get paid.
Yeah.
Is very painful because you haven't been paid for like 2 months sometimes.
Well, sometimes if we do 50-50, if they wait, then we'll ask like, okay, if you're gonna take a couple more months, meet me halfway. I'm a big fan of meeting halfway. You meet me
I see what you're
halfway,
saying, yeah,
pay 25% of it,
yeah.
and then I
Yeah.
get, the remaining 25% when you launch.
We tend to stay away from 50-50 now. In fact, most of our billing now is done in sprints.
Yeah.
If it's
That's a great way to do it too. I worked
If
with
it's-
the company that did the Airtable project I told you about. I did it on sprints, and I felt like at the end of the day, I felt like if I did a flat rate, it would have been inflated, just to ensure that it maybe
Well,
got
I tell
there
people
where
that up
sprints
front.
works perfect.
I'll tell customers up front, say, hey, this is not something that we've done, but we've done things that are very similar, and we think it's going to take along these lines of time, maybe anywhere from 30 to 50 hours. We're going to bill you in sprints of 10 hours and check in every 10 hours and let you know how we're doing.
And
And
the easiest way to sell
hold
that.
on, hear me out. And as you do that, you have the check-ins, and then you start billing next sprint, and they're happy to pay because they're seeing that work is completed.
And I think the easiest way to sell that is going to be is when you telling them that they're going to get that architectural deck, the design deck that is worth something right there. So I will say, based on that, you'll know exactly every requirement, what it's going to look like, how it's going to work. And then from there, we can tell you a better estimate on how long it might take us, so that you might have 4 more sprints after that, kind of thing.
Yeah. And we let people know too, like, hey, if you were looking for some kind of project that was turnkey, maybe like a 5-pager website with a single product or 10 products, we can do flat fee on that all day long. all day long because
Yeah, oh, yeah.
we know exactly, we've gathered enough intelligence over the years through project management software where we know how long it's going to take, right?
Yeah.
So that,
And that's why I put, go ahead.
anytime something falls on the customize vertical, that's when you have to bring up and say,
Yeah,
hey, we can do this two ways. Either I can pad it up a lot or you can pay me in sprints.
yeah. So that's typically what, like, normal process WooCommerce is, having I put a technology stack, I call it, inside the proposal.
Oh,
And
I
then
like
it lists
that.
out the plugins that we
Yes,
use.
yes,
It spells out what they do, and I tell the
yes.
clients to thoroughly
Do the
review
same
those
thing, yeah.
requirements.
And sometimes we'll put in like, subscriptions, for example, right? We'll say, hey, this is going to be achieved with such and such plugin, right? And if it requires
Yeah.
customization, we'll add an extra line that says
Yes,
customization of
absolutely.
subscriptions, and we'll
Yeah.
do either TBD, sprint billing, or we put in the range, maybe 10 to 20 hours, depending on what
Yeah.
a customization is. So anyway, so
Cool.
moving along then, so we got approval, we're gonna go get ready for launch now. At this point, what we do is we also hand over documentation to the customer, right? Specifically, if we've created custom functionality. So
Yes.
the way, here's usually how we do it. This happens to be for a customer where they had somebody start their e-commerce site, they couldn't finish it, they brought it over to us. There was a
Yeah.
lot of rules and a lot of complexity. So that's why the previous developer probably couldn't finish it. But the bottom line is there was a lot of basic functionality. And usually when there's basic functionality that hasn't been customized, we'll just reference that documentation. Hey, it's already been written, right? But anytime we create any kind of function, any custom function, we'll go ahead and screenshot
Absolutely, man. This is
screenshot
so
it.
important for a client to have.
Correct, step by step. And that way, if they have a question, I tell them, say, hey, you have any questions regardless of this, you reach out to us.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a question 3, 4, 5 months from now. You can always refer to the documentation and say, hey, we're gonna put it in here, or hey, we've already put that in there. Here are the steps that you follow, kind of thing.
So yeah, I always tell clients to make sure that, well, for me too and my team, but for clients, like if they are not going to use us, I always tend to tell them, make sure if you do get customization, there's code notes in the code.
Oh, I mean, that rarely happens.
Because if you come back to me because they didn't do a good job,
yeah,
the first thing I'm going to look at it, and if I can't tell what it is, I have to rebuild it anyway. Because if it's customized and there's 10,000 lines
say that.
of code.
It's so funny you say that because
Yeah.
anytime we get approached by a customer that says it's an existing website and how much is it going to cost me? And the first thing that comes to mind is, well, we have to look at the code, but most importantly is we have to know if it's commented. Because if it's not commented,
You're fine.
it's a guessing. It is a guessing game to understand what does what. I mean, we're gonna be flipping switches, commenting on
we've taken over
breaks.
monster sites that were just a hot mess, and it just they knew it. I mean, fortunately the client knew that this site is a mess and we're gonna have our time cut out for us. So we got paid, but it cost a pretty penny, and then we got to a point of rebuilding it. So provided all the code notes. One other tool I mentioned too is Awesome Screenshot. It's kind of like Loom, but I think it's really easy through the browser, and it creates shareable links like within a second.
Oh, I see.
So I use Awesome Screenshot with my team. So my whole team is always constantly doing videos. With this tool here. So yeah, it's a great tool.
We use Snagit. We've been using Snagit for over a decade.
Oh, I got Snagit. I have it too. I have Camtasia. I use Camtasia.
It's come a long way. What is it?
What's sad, my son always yells at me. He's like, dude, Dad, use Adobe Premiere. Like, why are you using Camtasia? I'm like, it's just more simple. I don't have to do a bunch of crap. I just it takes me 2 seconds to edit things. But I just don't, the products don't, the video rendering is not as nice as Adobe. Anyway, but this one does really
for a pinch. That's great. Or
it's a good
even the customers, even how tos or really quick notes.
Yeah, that's what we do. You put folders in the back end of the app, so you put folders for each of your clients, so it's really easy to organize. And we've been using it for a while. It's one of those tools that's just gotten better as the years go on. So been a client for at least 4 years now.
By the way, since you brought up Adobe, did you hear the Figma deal fell through? Adobe pulled out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I like, and
Well, it's a good product.
yeah, Adobe pulled
That's
out.
good though. I
think,
don't
like
want
in
Adobe to
December.
own
Yeah,
everything.
I didn't either. I didn't want it to
Yeah,
own
like they bought
everything.
Macro Media and they just, and that was it. It just, like, it never was, I liked back then. Anyway, yeah, Adobe's, it's
Yeah,
okay.
so
I'm not,
Adobe was gonna pay 20 billion for Figma.
holy smokes. Imagine if you created that Figma. Oh my God.
I
Like the
know.
guys that created Jira.
Are you kidding?
Oh my,
What's the say?
500 million, I think they sold, well, 500 or something
I didn't
crazy.
know
I don't know
that.
how much.
Wow. Well, anyway,
Ah, dude.
make a long story short, Adobe had to pay a $1 billion breakup fee because
What?
they couldn't. Look, it was kind of like
They're like, sure, man. Hey, you want to come back around? Just let me
here's
know.
our routing info.
I'll
Here's
be
our
on my
bunch of routing
yacht.
info. No, have a great day.
I'm gonna
It's been
yeah.
a pleasure.
Holy shit.
No, but
So I get,
I kind of felt like, listen, nothing against that Adobe. We've made a lot of money with Adobe over the years. We've benefited from their tools.
yeah.
Adobe has its place, but it was just not cool to have Adobe buy Figma. Figma was kind of like
That new kid on the block that was
the
kicking
newcomer,
ass.
the disruptor, and to watch it get gulped up by a larger entity, it's
And
like,
then maybe just disappear. That's the other thing that can happen. All of a sudden you're like, oh, the Figma tools
oh
being
yes, it's been
sunset.
deprecated. Yes. Yeah. Anyway.
I mean, I like that. So Xcode sucked. Was it Xcode or Adobe? What was the version that was Figma? It was Adobe.
I
Not,
I I know what you're talking
oh, I
about.
forgot the name of
It
it,
just
but
I needed more time, dude.
well, you know what it was? It wasn't for us. Like Figma's great because it just did exactly what it needed to do, and that was build
Well,
design templates.
no, it's lightweight. It's easy to collaborate.
Yeah.
Everything.
There's tons of extensions. There's like,
Yeah,
people can
everything's on
build
the
their own
cloud.
extensions.
Everything's on the cloud,
Yeah.
so that just makes it so much easier to collaborate. And this is a
Yeah.
collaborative world. And then on top of that, it's cheap. Like
1
Adobe.
billion. Fuck. Sorry, that's a lot of money.
All right.
God,
So
making
just
peanuts
kind of moving
compared
along.
to that.
Now let's talk about going
That's
live.
like my $1 compared to their money.
I know. Anyway, yeah, you brought up Adobe. I thought I'd bring that up.
Yeah.
Um,
All right, so I think
going
we
live.
covered
Going live.
pretty
Let's talk
much.
about going live. What's your process for going live, Judd? You kick this one off. Because now
Okay.
remember, we're at the step now where the client has signed off on the project. We're ready to go live.
Sign off. So there's
push
definitely a
like the rocket or
checklist,
like the
a go
candle.
live checklist for every customer. If you're going to go live, there are so many checks that you got to do that might not even have anything to do with the web project itself that you even worked on, like redirects, SEO. You don't want to mess up any of that stuff. Don't want to mess up their tracking. You want to make sure Google Analytics, Facebook, TikTok, whatever they had is not disrupted. One thing that we find that no one does right, and usually if it is does right, you sure don't want to break it. That is if you have server-side tracking set up with Google Tag Manager or AWS Server. There's so many little things like that that have to be reviewed. Then it has to be like a full QA. And typically if it's e-commerce site, you want to make sure that you QA the complete buying experience. Like it needs to be from homepage to checkout to thank you page, and check that the scripts are firing that were there prior if it was an existing site. So because any of that stuff you break it, it's just going to come back to you.
I know what you mean. The SEO is a big one, and that's something we usually handle during discovery. Is is it an existing website?
Yeah.
How much traffic?
You check, yeah.
And then at some point in the process, usually in the development process, when 301s get put in, we'll run it by our SEO team. They'll do a list of backlinks, where they're pointed to in terms of URL, so we don't lose any of that link juice. And also, what generates the highest traffic organically, and making sure all those are redirected.
Because the client gets rid of pages, maybe it's a page that got a ton of traffic and they don't realize it,
right? Yeah. Even in some cases, if it's a really busy website, we'll do right before design, if we're going to redesign, right, or re-architect the structure, we'll try to identify which sites get the top organic traffic, so we don't lose, not which sites, I'm sorry, which pages get the top organic traffic, so we don't lose that. You want to retain that.
Absolutely.
The big one here. the
do
big one
that
here
if they,
going live is the robots.txt, the no index, right? So
yeah.
once you go
Oh,
live,
yeah.
you want to make
Ah,
sure.
yeah. Because you don't want the staging, you don't
You
want
know,
the staging site to show up in search, so you block it,
right,
only to launch it and have it be blocked.
de-indexed, yes.
And then just that just
So it's
foo-bars.
funny, in our project management software, we have a checklist, we have a task list that has a checklist for go
Yeah.
live, right? It's generic, we change it for each customer, but it is generic off the box or out of the box. But the robots.txt is like, it's got like exclamation marks on it. It's bold.
Yeah, no, I literally is one of the things I state every time. Did you guys, first it's security, did you harden the site? And did you check to make sure you're not blocking search? Those two things, because that's the other thing that happens too. A lot of people don't do in development, they don't actually harden a WordPress site. So if a client, I tell the client flat out, if you use password 123, you're asking for trouble. That's your problem. You get hacked, it's not us. Like, you need to use 2FA nowadays and have a hard password. Reason you use 2FA is because, let's say you get hacked on your computer's browser and they pull all your passwords from your browser. Doesn't matter what you do with WordPress, then they can get in and do anything they want to your website. Because we've had that happen. It's, why did it get hacked? Why did it get hacked? There's nothing wrong with the site. And I'm like, well, it came in through your user at this time and did this, this, and this. Well, I didn't do it. I'm like, well, you might want to start scanning your computer, because you've been compromised. And what's your password? Password 123.
Yeah,
I'm like,
it's yeah, right.
yeah.
I mean, it's
So going live, yeah, security hardening, and also like you said, the SEO, making sure that you're not destroying that, for sure.
yeah. So
Is that bad text? You look like you're like, fuck,
yeah,
I gotta
I'm
take care
sorry.
of
It
this
was.
shit.
I made the mistake of checking my phone. I'm so sorry.
You should check your phone.
Yeah. So obviously security is huge these days. Right?
Edit that out.
Yeah, we're almost done. But security is just a huge topic these days, right?
Yeah.
We sort of tie that in with maintenance and security.
Yeah, that's exactly where the segue. So that's a great point there. So if any agencies or freelancers, the one thing that will keep you alive through the thick and thin is support plans and further management of that site when you launch it. So what you build, you want to build well, because you might be managing it. And if you're managing it and you don't secure it, you don't, make sure the SEO is not screwed. Guess whose problem it's automatically is? It's yours no matter what. But so it's one of those things I think, yeah, from a management standpoint, that is a good segue into getting residual income for your agency.
No doubt. We kind of skipped over one big feature as far as going live, and that is a soft launch. Especially if it's a brand new application or some type of new service you're deploying. I usually
You
like
do that like on a subdomain and get people to bang up against it.
Sometimes that's the case, right? You can put on a subfolder, you can put on a subdomain, have some or hide it somewhere in the root URL maybe, but have a way where just certain customers are going to be able to get to it, and you're going to let them know up front, hey, we're testing this out. Feel free to take it for a ride right here and let us know if there's any issues. And then once we've
done customer group studies on sites where they go and check out things and check, they get like a coupon code to be able to, surf a subdomain, to go through an actual buying process. That we've done a few things like that, so they can see what the after it's done, there's a survey after they buy, and that survey they talk about the new site, how well they liked it. So that way, if they really want to know before launching it, they can do something like that. I've done that a few times over. So, and they work well. I mean, at least it gives the confidence to the customer that it works. But that gets into which a lot of, and as well as I do, is conversion rate optimization, A/B testing, all that fun stuff. I always like, telling customers, just know you're building one version of the site that out of 5 personas, maybe only 2 of them like. So it's always good to do testing at, after the site launches. You can test different different buying experience, things like that, because that always helps. So
yeah, that kind of like ties more into marketing, CRO and all that.
yeah.
So,
But
but
again, wearing more hats means more security, you know what I mean? And more
sure.
jobs, security for
Yeah, no,
yourself.
no doubt, no doubt. Yeah, that's something you, again, it's something you also talk about throughout the process. Like, hey, what's going to be your marketing strategy for the website? Because I tell
Yeah,
people, like, hey, building is only one part of it. The other part of it is market penetration or product/service awareness. That's going to cost you.
yeah.
But back to maintenance, and I think with some particular platforms, it's critical that you have some kind of maintenance.
Sorry. You hear my dogs?
No,
Okay, all right. If you don't hear them, there's someone, I have a painter coming, so edit that out. Whoever, but, so yeah, we gotta wrap it though, because I think
we're
we're at an
wrapping it. This
hour.
is it. This is it. Maintenance and security. So yeah, with that being said, at this point, it's important that as a website owner, your website's maintained for cleanliness, for updates, which will cover your security as well as your functionality and longevity. We run across websites where they're so outdated as far as plugins, and then
Yeah,
there'll be a change on the hosting side where they say, hey, we're no longer going to support this version of PHP. You need to upgrade, but once you upgrade, the site breaks, right?
yeah.
So we've got to.
And that's why you need well-documented sites, code notes, all that stuff. Because when you go into maintenance, you're not gonna remember every site you built and whatever you did.
No, you're right. You don't.
I mean,
Yeah,
unless you're working on it every day.
well,
That's where all
we
that
have
comes in handy.
we have different levels of maintenance. So we'll have our basic levels, but then our enterprise levels, everything gets staged
Yeah.
before we do anything.
Yeah, and then we also, we do like Git more for like the enterprise clients. We'll do Git instead. So
Right.
every push, every change is logged properly. And I prefer that type of work. I used to kind of steer away from it. The smaller jobs are easy, but as we really got a good process using Git in the larger clients, it's so just
Yeah,
it's in harmony.
It's when you have multiple,
It's just beautiful, man.
when you have multiple
Versus
people, when you have multiple people working on a project, that is just, it's a must.
yeah, absolutely.
It's a recipe for disaster. How many times has code been overwritten? How many times on a Slack channel do you hear, is somebody else working on this website?
Yeah. Hey, that's so true.
All right, so that concludes this podcast. Thanks for your time. We'll see you at the next one. Once again, I'm Carlos with Bright Code, and this is my co-host,
Judd from Bright Vessel.